So, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on a rainy day on the West Coast, online and here in the room. It's great to see you. Hope you still have energy, but the return coming to the March final stretch. But thanks for being here. So before we start off, let me remind that we acknowledge and respect the Kwangan Muslim peoples on whose territory the university stands, and the Kwangan peoples whose historical relationship with the land continues to this day. And Karolina, this is, and you probably have realized here in Canada that we do acknowledge, the land we are on, how privileged you are to be hosted here on the land of the Indigenous peoples, and it's part of the reconciliation process that we do at the universities and also around different institutions. I'm not sure you heard about this, but that's, Karolina and I met in the project on collective memory. So, I think by now you've heard this tradition from Canada, and was part of a collective endeavor that we did with our European partners to explore issues when it comes to history, how it's being commemorated, and how past injustices are being addressed. So for this, we also have this, I think. So let me introduce Karolina Kabuk. What is the proper pronunciation? Kabuk. Okay. Brother, I thought so, but Serbians.
Oh no, I haven't really.
Oh yeah, even worse, and I can tell the difference. So she is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Novi Sad, where she completed her BA, MA, and also a PhD in 2019 from the Center for Gender Studies. And she, as you can see, she has also administrative experience that is close to actually what we do here at the center. A center for interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary studies and research, more graduate training, as I understand. Whereas we are here, this is more kind of, it's not training, we don't, but we have fellows, PhD fellows, and different projects housed at the center. And currently, Karolina is doing her Marie Skłodowska postdoctoral fellowship, a very distinguished fellowship awarded by the European Union. And if I'm not mistaken, what we hear from you today will be on the research that is conducted under the Marie Skłodowska-Curie fellowship. And as you can see here, her main focus in the research are ethnic minorities, language barriers, gender disparities, academia, and ethnic intermarriages. And I think you conducted even a little bit of research while being here on the Hungarian minority in Canada. So we are very curious to hear about, your presentations entitled Minority Rights and Intermarriages in Central and Eastern Europe. Welcome to the center, Karolina. It's wonderful to have you here. We met at the Budapest conference that we did with our network, and it's great to see you here and see hopefully that we can continue.
Thank you so much, Oliver. I think I'll stand in the end. And thank you for this wonderful introduction. And it's manage everything and to come, especially the accommodation part in Victoria. But I'm really glad, and I'm super excited. So today I will talk about not only my Marie Curie topic, but also something I did earlier on minority communities and minority rights. And so I have to hear the so getting better. Yeah, a bit about the Marie Curie fellowships. Oliver knows all about it, but let me just briefly introduce it. So it's a flagship postdoctoral fellowship of the European Commission. It is, so mine, the European one, is 24 months, so 2 years. There is a global one, which is 3 years, and it means that 2 years are spent overseas and 1 in Europe. And it's highly competitive, so the acceptance rate is between 8 to 10%. Which means that a lot of people want to apply for it, and it's really good when you get one. So, okay. Yeah, but I would like to. Anyway, is it, I have to have one in between. No?
Don't think so.
I've not, okay. Anyway, yeah, basically, what I wanted to say before I started my presentation is the context of which I was born in and grew up in. So yes, Serbia, or this northern part of Serbia, once belonged to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which means that a lot of minorities lived there. And basically, after 1920, after the Trianon Treaty, that Hungarian kingdom was divided into a few countries, and there was, or the minority language education, which was first not a minority, but after 1920, of course, it became a minority language education, maintained since then. So basically, 100 years after, here I am as an ethnic Hungarian from Serbia who got all her education from kindergarten until the end of high school in her first language or mother tongue, basically Hungarian. So this is why it's interesting that these minorities in this northern part of Serbia still have a lot of cultural autonomy, I would say. And you can see the colors. So not the Hungarian minority in this northern province called Vojvodina is the biggest one. However, there are a few others who also have the right for the mother tongue education. So the Slovaks, the Romanians, the Russians are the ones who also have. The Roma community is also a big one, but unfortunately it doesn't have any mother tongue education. So this is the map which was drawn after the 2011 census. Today, or last year, we had another census, a new one, and I would say that this blue is bigger now. So blue is, of course, the majority community, the Serbs in Vojvodina, and that the minority communities are continuously shrinking. Due to various reasons, I will tackle a few. That is my slide, which I wanted to share. So yeah, basically, the treaty, this Trianon Treaty, ensured that minorities in newly formed countries would have access to education in their mother tongue or first language. And although some minority language schools were closed, education in mother tongue or first language has been maintained to this day. This is what I wanted to tell you. And the structure of my presentation will be that I will talk about the cultural autonomy in Vojvodina, the educational migration, language barriers, incentives of the National Council of the Hungarian Minorities. So I'm focusing mainly on the Hungarian minority because I'm most familiar with their work, and also because they are the biggest one, and so that's why they have a lot of political will, and they can do some things around. Of course, afterwards I will focus on intermarriages in Vojvodina and Serbia. This is my Skłodowska-Curie topic. And yeah, you can see a bit the population of Vojvodina. So this is the census data from 1953 until 2022. And in red, you can see the minorities. Almost 500,000 of Hungarians in 53, and now the new census data says that there are 180,000. So basically, this is a huge shrinkage of the minority community, and this is also true for the Slovaks and Romanians. And I pointed out here the Yugoslavs. So Yugoslav was a supranational identity introduced by the socialist Yugoslavia and Tito as their leader, and it was mainly introduced or used by those who were born in intermarriages, because they didn't have to really define themselves in an ethnic way, and they could use this Yugoslav identity. And you can see how this varied. So first it was very attractive, then it didn't get so attractive, and then in 2002. after the dissolution of Yugoslavia, it again became attractive, probably because of this nostalgia for the greater Yugoslavia, which meant brotherhood and unity, and the communism in Yugoslavia was much different than what you've seen in Hungary and the terror Mazar events together. So yes, it was a dictatorship, but it wasn't such a cruel dictatorship. And yes, Tito had also the detention center in Croatia, in Goli Otok, so it's a small island where he closed all his political enemies, but it wasn't so bad as in Hungary. Okay, so minority education, cultural autonomy. Members of the Hungarian minority are in challenging position. The main bodies of the living nation states inside the European Union, but they locked out in Serbia, a non-EU state. So, as I told you, they have the right to finish their preschool, primary, secondary education in their mother tongues. But after high school, there is two ways. So, most often, they need to decide between continuing their studies in a predominantly Serbian language higher education system, or to go to Hungary and continue their education in their mother tongue. It depends how much they acquire, or what's the level of their Serbian language at the point when they are 18 years old. So basically, what I want to say that this mother tongue, the first language education, has its downsides as well, even though it is designed to preserve the minority community. If it creates also this language barrier, which I was tackling a lot during my PhD research. And why is this now a question after so many years? So basically a lot has happened after Orban government came into power. So 10 years ago, from 10 years ago until now, yes, a lot of money flow came into this communities across the border. So not only in Vojvodina and Serbia, but also in Transylvania. It's one of the, and it has the biggest community, so 1 million Hungarians still live there. And one of these, novelties, basically this national council, which is not only national council of the Hungarian national minority, but it has like 20 national councils Serbia has. And it was initiated by Hungarian minorities. So one of the well-known lawyers from Vojvodina, Serbia, who lives in Budapest for so many years now, worked on this legislation of the national councils. And this is basically what it compensates the minorities for not having a territorial autonomy. So basically it's a cultural one, and it can help them, or it has the power to, they have the power to self-govern in culture, education, information, official use of languages and scripts, and this is what they do. So basically, what's interesting with this national council is that they are financed by the Serbian state. However, the financial part is pretty minimal. So here comes the king state. So king state, as you know, maybe Brubaker's triadic nexus. So he says that there is the king state, there is the nationalizing state, and there are the minorities. So in this triangle, the national council would be this in the minority self-government, which is now in a challenging position because yes, it is part of the Serbian state and it gets financed by it. However, it's so minimal that they are, of course, expecting or getting aid from the king state, which is Hungary. And what they get the aid for is to they introduce scholarships for minority students in order for them to stay in Serbia and try to get a diploma in Serbia, to learn the language if they, or to try to be better in Serbian language in order to complete their studies. Also, there is a big student dorm built in Novi Sad, where is a big university. I mean, when it comes to Vojvodina, it has one state university, that is the University of Novi Sad, and it has 50,000 students and 13 faculties. So basically, that's the biggest one, and it's the only state university. And it's a bit challenging because the Hungarian minority lives up in the north, so basically along the Tisa River, and they are not really close to Novi Sad. So it's also a financial thing for the parents, whether they can send their children to Novi Sad to get a university degree, or it's even easier for them to send them in Szeged, which is the first big city in Hungary across the border, where they would get a bigger scholarship than this one, and they would also get a new diploma, which is not true for Serbia. Anyway, this is how the National Council worked, and that is part of this triadic nexus. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, so this educational migration, which is continuously happening, is of course unfavorable for the country of origin, which is Serbia in this case, but it's true for Transylvania as well. It's true for Slovakia as well. Ukraine is now a different question. So basically, the Hungarian minority just fled to Hungary, and they are there. But this was also true before the war. Yeah, it has its positive effects: brain circulation, which creates knowledge networks, enriching all involved parties. This is a very positive view of this. And yeah, this educational migration for Serbia to Hungary is particularly in terms of higher education is one of the most significant types of migration. And it's a severe gradient for Serbia, but anyway, not really, the Serbian government is not really concerned about this. So the minority language education works that everything is in the minority language, and you have 2 or 3 classes per week of Serbian language. So now if you live in a settlement which is only minority inhabited, which and there are also these types of smaller towns along the Tisa River, it means that you won't really learn the language, because how can you learn 2-3 times per week, that's one class? I mean, that's not much. It's different when you are living in a bigger, like I'm coming from Novi Sad, and basically Novi Sad is like 2% of Hungarians live there. And it was somehow, I wouldn't say normal, but inevitable for me to learn the majority language. And yeah, it had its, of course, I was in a more favorable position than my colleagues who came to university and didn't know a word, for example, of Serbian language, and they had to learn it fast. But that also has its downsides, because when you learn the language during your university studies, it means that you lose a lot of energy on it, and basically your grades are not so good. And then when you finish your university studies, there are some positions for which you need a higher average grade. For example, becoming a judge, university professor, whatever. So for these, this means that basically the minority is somehow sidelined from the elite from the start, if they choose to stay in their own home country. Yeah, so the language barrier is, so language itself plays an important role in preserving the minorities. And this linguistic dimension has also an ethnic dimension. So it's an imagined future of the community that implies the use of the native language. And yeah, I already told you that minority language education brings a certain future risk for students. This is also interesting to say, but a lot of Serbian scholars say that this is really a risk, that this creates imbalanced bilingual speakers, that this is not really in favor of the minority communities, whereas minority scholars claim the opposite, that this is the only way how to preserve the minority community, how to see this imagined future of the community. So basically, you know, when I read those, they're totally opposite. But both of them are right in a way, you know. Yeah, so these national councils, I already told you about these as well. They have, yeah, scholarships, and they have this College of Europe, the student dormitory. So basically, the student dormitory was built entirely and financed by Hungary. So absolutely, I mean, not a dime was spent by the Serbian government on it. And the employees there are also financed and paid by Hungary. So there is a risk in it as well, because if the government changes in Hungary, probably some of these, some of the politics around minority communities might change. And, you know, this is the sustainability of these initiatives are basically, I mean, uncertain. Yeah, I want to share with you some of my research I was doing for my PhD, and I did a quantitative research, I mean, a questionnaire based with minority high school graduates. So not only Hungarians, I did with Slovaks and Romanians. But I think I only present here the Hungarians. Anyway, it's very similar. So all the minorities have very similar views when it comes to education, language barrier, and such. So yeah, I was curious about the level of the Serbian language, the usage of the majority language, where they are going to, you know, apply for higher education, and the reasons behind it. So, as you can see, you know, I don't speak, only understand, only a few words. This is when it comes to whether they speak Serbian or not. So when you add up, this is more than 15%, and then not very well, almost 30%. So, you know, and when you add all these up, it means that almost half of them are incompetent in a state language, and that means that, you know, they have to either go to Hungary or somehow try to level up their knowledge. And yeah, this is maybe the same. So where do students intend to continue their education? Serbia and Hungary. I will try in both countries, but if I pass in Hungary, I will study there. So this is also very alarming, because, you know, when you add the Hungary, and I will try, and then if I manage, if I succeed, I will stay in Hungary. So basically, almost the same. Even more are going to go to Hungary to study. So this is the brain drain, and this is how it happens, that the minorities are just leaving, and then it's very hard to come back, of course, after you finish your higher education in Hungary. So what was interesting within my research, that all the research before this one stated that they mainly leave because they do not know the language perfectly, or they don't know the language in a level that they could afterwards finish their higher education. When I did my research, most of them said that it is because they have the possibility for acquiring an European Union's diploma, which of course is a new thing, because somehow they reversed this disadvantage of being a minority and tried to make it an advantage, and this advantage was seen in acquiring the diploma, which would then mean more, and of course Hungary is just one step in this migration flow. They most of them don't stay in Hungary, but go to work in other, mostly Western European countries. Germany, for example, is very attractive, and Austria as well. And maybe I told you the conclusions surrounding the value of the diploma, and also I told you that this is the problem. They say the cumulative grade point average, which then creates other disadvantages for the minorities. Yeah, so this advantage might even extend to their chances after graduation when entering the labor market in Serbia, which certain professions are reserved for well-integrated individuals with excellent Serbian language skills. Yeah, so let me then continue with my Marie Curie topic. I did a lot on education, and it was only one part was a quantitative analysis. I did a lot of interviews with men and women who are employed at the University of Novi Sad or Belgrade, and who are from minority community, but I also did interviews with men and women who are from the majority community. And I wanted to see how do they perceive themselves, and do they think that being a minority is such a disadvantage after they entered somehow the university. First they finished the university in Serbia, and then they became professors or teaching staff at those two universities. And the main point was that there was a gender difference as well. So women saw this language barrier as the biggest thing in their life. So it was very hard to overcome. Some because I also interviewed students as well. Some students said that this is too hard for them. They have to quit. They have to go to Hungary and such. But there was this gender difference, and men perceived it as an obstacle, but which you can overcome and then have so many advantages around it. Like you have the minority language, you know the majority one, you can publish in one language, the second language, the third as English, of course. And they saw it like an opportunity, whereas women saw it as something, as a hardship, which is hard to overcome. And also I was interested whether they can reach, for example, decision-making positions within the university level. And that was also very interesting that, women saw themselves only as teachers, as someone who is there to serve the students, to be very good with them, to, answer all their questions and such. Whereas men saw it also as an opportunity that at some point in their career, of course, they will get, or they will try to get this decision-making position. So, yeah, the minorities saw that the level they acquired is enough and they cannot do more. Maybe if they get some support from their ethnic community. So that was also interesting. Ethnicity was more prominent than the gender differences. So they saw themselves first as a minority, member of the ethnic minority community or national community, and then as then gender differences were secondary for them. Okay, so yeah, after finishing this, and I also published a book from this topic, I thought that maybe just a bit of a shift would do good, and to see how now ethnic intermarriages work in Vojvodina first, and then I hope I can also do some research elsewhere when it comes to this topic. And yeah, so basically, when it comes to marriage, I already got this question of, well, marriage is not so common anymore. Now we should call it partnership. And then, yes, however, marriage is still what the scholarly, so in the academic language used still uses marriage or intermarriages. And also it has, I'm a law graduate, I have a law degree. And, it is, from a lawyer's point of view, it is a different thing when you say marriage than you say partnership. Because in a marriage, partners have different responsibilities and different rights. And from, of course, the legal perspective. So the state looks at the marriage differently than it looks at the partnership. And so yeah, that's why we still focus on marriages and not partnerships. And so marriages can be culturally homogamous or exogamous. When it comes to homogamous, less cultural tensions. Heterogamous or exogamous, manifold cultural challenges can be found. And when it comes to intermarriages or exogamous marriages, they involve partners of different nationalities, religious affiliation, ethnic or racial origins. And this topic was tackled really vastly in the US. But when it comes to Europe, there's two types of scholarly work when it comes to intermarriages. First, it can be seen that it's mostly done in the western part of Europe, and it involves one immigrant partner, and the other is the partner or a member of the host society. When it comes to Central Eastern Europe, it's a different thing because intermarriages are seen between national minorities and the majorities. And they are not so, they are still under research, even though for example, some Transylvanian scholars did a lot on this topic in Transylvania. But still, and also the statistics only measure in Europe, for example, partners who have different citizenship, so their marriages. But they do not see, they are blind when it comes to partners who have the same citizenship but a different ethnic. So when it comes to my Marie Curie project, I was interested in contributing in 3 levels to the state of the art. So the macro, the social aspects of mixed marriages, the meso, the family dynamics and tensions of couples in mixed marriages, and the micro, the identity constructions of persons born into mixed marriages. So mixed marriages or intermarriages are also used interchangeably. And I also focus on 3 minorities. So the same ones I already tackled when it comes to my PhD research. So the Hungarian, Slovak, and Romanians. I already told you that these 3 have the right for minority education, mother tongue education, and that's why it's interesting because if it comes to an intermarriage, they can choose between one or the other. So some of the research questions: are intermarriages bridges between social groups or so-called destroyers, national authority? Because these destroyers is even, it's a very strong word, but some of the scholars use it as, because they really affect the minority communities. Is the nationalizing state benefiting from these intermarriages? How and to what extent do religion, culture, class, settlement type, and the education level of family members, friends affect intermarriages? Which are the guiding principles for intermarried couples when making important family level decisions about their children? For example, naming them, religion, spoken language, or tuition language, and what are the identity patterns of children born into intermarriages? Religion is very important in Vojvodina. So basically in Central Eastern Europe as a whole, it's important, but it's even more so because Serbs are Orthodox, and the minority communities are only the Russians are also Orthodox, but they're a very small community. But mostly the minority communities are either Protestants or first Catholics and then Protestants. So it's quite a big difference between these religions when it comes to Orthodox and the others. Yes, this was, oh, yeah, this one I already told you that the migrants are more tackled when it comes to intermarriages in Western Europe, and national minorities are more represented when it comes to Central Eastern Europe. It doesn't have to be, I mean, for example, in Finland, you have a very big Swedish community. And of course, there are Finnish marriages, but Swedes are not perceived as national minority in Finland. They are, equal as the Finnish group. When it comes to Central Eastern Europe, it's not like that. So basically, minorities are perceived as national minorities. And for example, when you see the new constitution of Serbia, when you open it, it says that it's land or the country of Serbs and every other nation. So it doesn't really level up, it means that there are hierarchies in this approach. Whereas in Finland, this is not the case, I wanted to say. Also, there is a Danish minority in Germany, North Germany, so in Flensburg, which is also interesting. And not a lot of research was done on intermarriages there, so this is also something we plan to do. Yeah, so what I saw when I started my research or reading all things around written on intermarriages, I saw that the literature is basically divided by these three topics. The fact intermarriage has on society, the fact it has on families, and the gender differences in these intermarriages. So this is what scholars mainly talk about or write about. So I won't really speak about the Western part of Europe and the migrants and the host society members, because this is not the focus of my Marie Curie, so I will talk more about the Central Eastern European part. What we can see, there is also this, the dichotomy between scholars who work on migrants and host society members when it comes to intermarriages, and scholars who work on minority communities and intermarriages. That the first one say that it is a great way of integrate. So they have this integrative perspective, and that they are very much welcomed. When it comes to the other scholars, they say that this is a minority community erosion. So basically, they see the negative part in it, whereas the others see very much the positive side of it. So the creation and breakup of empires created national minorities, and potentially it generating tensions between partners of different ethnicities. So why? Because they have a shared history. There is the land they shared for many centuries, and basically they have to somehow divide or come to an agreement how to share this history which they have. When it comes to migrants and host society members, it is a different thing, because of course a migrant came with the knowledge that something or some parts of their cultural identity will be lost, or could be some hardship to preserve. But here you don't have this, so that's why the tension is here bigger. So in Transylvania, Tamás Kis argues that members of ethnically mixed couples are constantly forced to choose between two ethnically marked identities. Due to social power asymmetry between majorities and minorities, the choice often gravitates towards the majority identity, which results in ethnic minority group erosion and dangers and cultural reproduction. So this is how it's perceived by a Transylvanian scholar, who is, of course, might figure out that he's a minority, he's a member of the minority community. He's a great sociologist anyway. So Yeah. So Yugoslavia was very interesting from this point of view when it comes to intermarriages, because it was created and intermarriages were very much encouraged between different nations. So of course, Yugoslavia had 7 countries, if I'm not wrong, and the nations were, so constitutive nations, they were called. And there were the minorities as well. So national minorities were also acknowledged, but the size of those communities were, of course, smaller, and then the constitutive nations were the main ones. So the encouragement between the intermarriages between constitutive nations were open. I mean, that was somehow perceived as a wanted thing. And however, in 1967, already Yugoslavia was very much, a prosperous country by then. Showed how respondents quickly rejected members of other ethnic groups as possible spouses. So even though it was very much on the state level wanted and they wanted and encouraged, when it comes to this research was conducted among not high school students, but university students. So basically 20-something years old. And they didn't want any other groups for their possible spouses. Of course, this is also due to religion. Mostly in Yugoslavia, not only Orthodox and Roman Christian or Catholics were presented, but also a lot of a big Muslim community, which is the Bosniaks in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in Kosovo, of course, the Kosovo Albanians. Similar tensions were observed by Brubaker when he went to do a research in Cluj, Kološvar, Romania. In 2018, the book was published, so basically they did the research a few years before that. And they said that heated arguments arise between couples when they discuss, for example, political issues concerning their spouses' respective nations. So it was very interesting in the book how they presented that, one of the partners was very much into Hungarian politics, the other one is very much into the Romanian one, and they even before in front of the researchers had an argument. Also it is said that acculturation and assimilation of minority spouse is very much what happens when it comes to intermarriages. The gender differences. Marriages revealed more exogamy among men than women within conservative traditional ethnic communities, which were mainly the Serbian, Turkish, Macedonian, Montenegrin, Romanian, Albanian. So those who were from Muslim religion, they were more conservative when it comes to intermarriages. The most open community was the Hungarian one when it comes to the intermarriages in Yugoslavia. So in some traditional environments in the Balkans, when women enter into intermarriage, they are more likely than men to abandon their native language and to basically, this is the patriarchal values are still there. So it is perceived that the women should somehow get more close to their husband in every way. So this is also like abandoning their own cultural identity, for example. And the third one is the identity building patterns of mixedness. So when people who are born into these mixed marriages often encounter different prejudices, which puts them in a disadvantageous position. And children born into intermarriage are often not identified as belonging to one ethnic group by cultural specificity is diminished, and they tend not to be accepted, for example, in the minority community. This is written by a scholar from Slovakia, that if they are from a mixed background, if they have mixed background, then it's more easy for them to become a member of the majority community than it is to become a minority one. And this is why the minority communities are also shrinking, because they are not really accepting members. So they are more rigid when it comes to their boundaries. So the supranational identity, I already told you about the Yugoslav, as the Yugoslav one was to hide mixed origins, because it was free from ethnic and class labels, they say, even though I'm not really sure that it was in practice, but that was the idea of communists in the plan. I told you that I did so I focused on these three groups, and I did interviews with couples, so couples together, and one-by-one interview as well. And I've chosen here some municipalities, when the smaller ones. So I did Novi Sad as a capital of Vojvodina, but only when it comes to focus group discussions with young people who are from intermarriages. But when it comes to couple interviews, I try to choose smaller settlements, just to see whether this is also something which affects intermarriages as well. And but first I had when it comes to quantitative, I mean, that was secondary data analysis. So all the I already showed you some data of census data which was acquired for this research, because it's Serbian state doesn't really count these intermarriages. You have to buy this data separately and ask them to do some analysis for you. So so the statistics, some of the statistics is here. So Serbs choose in a lesser percentage a spouse from another nationality. When it comes to Hungarians, 30% of them choose a partner from another nationality, Slovaks even higher, and Romanians even higher. So these percentages are, of course, because the minority communities are shrinking, and and minorities tend to live now a bit more dispersed. So of course, the so-called marriage market is different. So they cannot choose from their own nationality, but they have to those who they know. There is a gender perspective, women tend to outmarry more than men do, but the percentages are not so high. So basically, around 35% of 36% of women of the Hungarian nationality marry out, for example. Yes, this ethnocultural reproduction. It means that, for example, even though both parents are from the Hungarian community, it doesn't mean that they will, in the end, have a child which belongs to the Hungarian community. This is also something ethnic minorities do, that they choose to bring up a child to become a member of the Serbian community, just to assure that she has a better starting point. So this is something also that what minority parents choose. It was more prominent during the socialist period to do this, and also during the 1990s when it comes to the Yugoslav wars, because then it was perceived to be a burden to be a member of the minority community. So basically, parents changed a bit their strategy when it came to bringing up a child in a minority community. So I did 60 interviews with couples, and I'm still analyzing it, so it's not really nearly done. But yeah, so the criteria was that they had to have at least one child, so that I can ask about those questions as well. Yeah, the focus groups were, I think, the most interesting part of the research. I had like 6 participants in Novi Sad and 5 in Senta. Senta is one of the, it's a smaller town in the middle of Vojvodina, and it's really almost Hungarian inhabited. So that's why I wanted to do this dichotomy. So Novi Sad is maybe majority and Senta is maybe minority, but the size is not really comparable, but what can I do? So that was the best. And yeah, some preliminary findings. So when it comes to couples interviews, they respect both cultures within the marital union. They respect both religions. So either they are Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox. And what they said, that they are feeling more distanced from the minority community than they are from the majority. So basically this mixedness there, this intermarriage, becomes somehow a barrier for the minority community, and it's and that's why they are getting more and more close to the majority one. Minority identity is hard to maintain within their children. And yes, I introduced here the theory of language ideologies, so either monolingual nationalism versus polyglot nationalism. So monolingual nationalism basically means that parents see the prosperity of their child in one language, and that language has to be perfectly acquired. So what I didn't talk about in the minority community education is that even though they learn the majority language, the Serbian language, in a very high level, the accent still remains. And this accent is also, alarm, basically, when it comes to the society, the Serbian society, basically. So every accent counts, and I wouldn't say that they are suspicious about it, but yes, it means that you are not an in-group, basically. Polyglot nationalism was more prominent for the minority community partners, because they said that the more languages you know, the bigger value you have, and they saw the minority language not as a identity component, but they saw it as an asset with which you can acquire again a EU diploma or go somewhere else, or because the minority languages got more value when all the members of the minority communities became EU state members. So the Romanians as well, Slovaks as well, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary as well. So after that, for example, when Hungary introduced double citizenship, a lot of people started learning Hungarian, because why? You can acquire a Hungarian citizenship if you can prove that you were born on the territory of the Austro-Hungarian Empire before 1920, or you have not born now, but you have ancestries born there on the territory, and that you know the language. So basically, because it was a very multicultural, multi-religious, multi-confessional, multi-state, that Austro-Hungarian Empire as well, a lot of course, Serbian people have their ancestry there. They can prove, but they didn't know the language. So at one point, I just realized how in Novi Sad, in every corner, there is, a Hungarian language school, which was absolutely unimaginable before. It was even, you couldn't even speak in a minority language during the 90s on the street, because you were exploited by people, random people. So basically totally changed, reversed the value of the minority language. And here, these minority partners see it as an asset, as something that they should preserve in their children, and somehow try to negotiate with their partners how to, introduce or how to preserve, because the majority partners are not really favorable when it comes to minority language education. They're really not, they think that it would cause harm for the child in a way that it won't, or she won't know the Serbian language perfectly, not in a level that, you know, the parent knows, and that they won't learn all those things around, of course, literature, history, which they did. Because minority language education means that you learn, okay, well, basically not all the Hungarian history, but some, and that you learn the Hungarian language and literature as well. So not in Serbian, only in a small part. So basically, this is where the majority partner feels that if she educates his child, her child in a minority language, that it won't, you know, look like them. So this is what they have the problem with. Yeah, so there was this gender difference. The majority partner cannot help the children if they would attend school in the minority language. And this was mainly based on the mothers. So if the mother is you know, from the minority community, then yes, there is the possibility the child to be educated because the mother could help out when it comes to learning with the child. But it's also, I don't see it as a valid argument anymore, because in elementary school, like from 7 years to 10 years old, children can have after school they have another teacher who helps them with doing the homework, which basically means that, you know, the parents' role in this learning with the child is not so valid anymore, because and you know, after they get 10 or more years, that people don't usually learn with their children anymore. So I don't know if it's a valid aspect, but they were very much you know, referring to this. So if a child is enrolled in a minority language, then the majority partner would be excluded basically from their education. And this is also somewhere in the connected to this monolingual nationalism, because there is not even a question that the majority partner would, you know, at some point maybe learn some minority language, and then they would be, you know, somehow in that introduced to this language education. Yes, some political arguments they had as well. So, for example, some of the majority partners were pro-Russian. This is just very much, I mean, for me, but it was a surprise that I even ended up somehow speaking about this during my interview, because I didn't really plan, while the minority partners were not. So, but as you know, Serbia has a political, I don't know, relationship when it comes to Russia. So it has a historical, of course, relationship. So yeah, a lot of Russian, I wouldn't say refugees, but immigrants came after the war started, and they live mostly they live in Belgrade, but I saw them also in Novi Sad. So basically, and they say that they were welcomed, they don't feel trapped in this earth. So it has some. Yeah, when it comes to focus group, this was very interesting. So I will just briefly go through the Novi Sad one. I had six young people, and 4 of them said that their parents were divorced. So this is also interesting. I mean, this is a very small sample. I cannot do any conclusions based on this. But what scholars say that intermarriages are not so stable. So they are more prone to divorce. And this was the first thing I noticed when I asked them that, you know, more than half of them said that their parents were divorced. When it comes to friendship, okay, I will. I think this.
No.
Okay. Yeah. I just said that the friendship was interesting, that they felt more excluded from they don't have so many Serbian friends, whereas they have Hungarians. But if they acquire a Serbian friend, it's a better friendship, for example, for them. Religion, yeah, this was interesting. They had a great respect for the Orthodox religion, even though they all spoke, for example, in a minority language during a focus group, and they were baptized in an Orthodox church. So this is a very new category when it comes to minority community. That there is a Hungarian speaking who has the Orthodox background. It's basically, unheard. But this is what comes when it comes to, mixedness and mixed identities. This is one of the very interesting parts. The anthem, for example, none of the 6 knew the Hungarian national anthem, but they knew and loved the Serbian one very much. This is an influence of the state. Because a few years ago, Serbia introduced, this was, I think, 1 year ago that it introduced that every school year has to start with the Serbian national anthem. Kin state, so they don't feel any connection to the Hungarian nation. When they visit Hungary, some of them knew Hungarian history, others don't. It depends how they are educated. And they feel that they cannot connect with Hungarian peers when they go to Hungary. Yeah, so this is my final slide. So Vojvodina traditionally has a high rate of mixed marriages, even in the former Yugoslavia, so I told you it was very prominent. This didn't even decrease during the nationalist conflicts in the 1990s. The inter-country conflicts have not, one aspect of this is that minorities often intermarry not only with members of the majority nation, but also with some other minorities can also intermarry. And so we can say that there is a gender difference that women more likely intermarry than men. This may be due to the higher social prestige of majority nationality husbands, but I cannot prove this because my sample is too small for this. So the cultural reproduction is symmetric if the husband belongs to the national minority, whereas if wife belongs to the national minority, ethnocultural reproduction becomes asymmetric. So basically, women are more prone to not to continue their cultural heritage and background when it comes to intermarriages. What's missing? So a comprehensive focus on intermarriages in the CE region, depicting the conflicts within intermarriages, so what types and how they are perceived. Explaining acculturation and assimilation patterns from a gender perspective, mother's role in intermarriages, for example, cultural transmissions, presenting the identity patterns of generations from mixed marriages, and some policy recommendations, maybe how to tackle this issue from the minority community, from the state perspective, and so on. So yeah, thank you so much.
We'd like to start us off.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a question because it wasn't clear to me. So you mentioned that children of mixed marriages, say Serbian Hungarians, speak Hungarian, they feel alienated when they go to Hungary. They don't feel Hungarian, and Hungarians in Hungary don't think they're Hungarian, and so on.
Yes.
But that's not the case of children of Hungarian couples who live in Serbia.
I would say that that's not in such a level, but they feel as well a bit, estranged from their Hungarian peers.
I see.
I didn't do this. I mean, my research doesn't tackle this issue, but this one not. But when I did, that was what I presented in Budapest. It was interviews with millennials who endured the war of the 1990s, and they were from minority community. And I had this question, okay, and they were all from the mixed marriage. And I had this question, okay, and how did you feel when you went to Hungary? And they were all very disappointed, very sad that they we weren't accepted, that we were perceived as Yugo Barbies. That was one of the, well, it was, I mean, it's even funny, but anyway, that they really felt not welcomed by Hungary at that time. And you know, there is some political questions around this as well. I also have, you know, have to answer certain questions when I'm in Hungary. That my mother tongue is Hungarian. So, but I spent the first half a year. Maybe we shouldn't record this.
Oh, we can take it out, don't worry.
No.
The first half a year at Vojvodina University, where everyone has a PhD, when everyone is, and a lot of people are doing, for example, minority research. My mother tongue is Hungarian. So this was unperceivable. I couldn't, you know, I was still trying to explain everyone. And then I thought, like, after, let's say, 8 months, I met a colleague at the canteen, and he sat across me. I said, "Oh, so your mother tongue is not Hungarian." And I said, "Oh no." But yeah, this is something common, basically, and those who are from intermarriages feel even more.
So that's,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, because isn't that surprising? Because so I lived 3 years in Budapest, and Hungarians are very proud of the fact that Hungarians are everywhere, and they say that Hungarians in Romania and Serbia are also Hungarian. But so that's what they say, that they behave differently.
You know, there is a joke that when a Sekler is a Transylvanian Hungarian, perceived as the biggest and most you know, important Hungarian, becomes a Romanian, and he goes to Hungary. Because, you know, after he crosses the border, he is perceived as a Romanian, and he has this proud heritage of being a, you know, a secular Hungarian. So yeah, differently perceived. I think that this is due to the communist period, which it had a different approach when it comes to the diaspora, Hungarian diaspora. So basically, they didn't even speak about it, that there are Hungarians across the border. And when the Berlin Wall fell after 1989, the Hungarian nation in Hungary had to somehow deal with the fact that there is a huge diaspora and how to tackle that issue. And you know, when it comes to migrant or migration questions in Hungary, you probably know how the government is treating that question and how they are really against it. So they can be against it because there is still such a huge diaspora, which of course comes, and you know, educated people come to Hungary and feel feeling for those who left for the UK. So
We're Sophia, Beate, and then we go to Janine online.
Thank you so much, fascinating presentation. I think I'm probably similar to a lot of people here that we're not so familiar with the geography. So I just have a really simple question first, and then a more political question. I'm curious about how similar the languages are, because when I was in Macedonia, for example, people were telling me, you know, one of the main reasons why, or North Macedonia isn't allowed to ascend to the EU is because they say that they speak Macedonian instead of Bulgarian. It's actually like kind of very, very similar language. So I'm curious if that's similar in this case, like how different are these languages that you're studying, or is it just like dialects and people can kind of understand each other? And then my second question, the political one, I think, and I really don't know the context at all, but I'm curious about why so many Hungarians are going to Serbia, because isn't the EU accession very interesting? Like, wouldn't you expect that it would be the opposite, that more Serbians would be trying to go to Hungary? Is the education system so much better in Serbia, or I'm just trying to understand why would what is the economic opportunity, or is it something else?
basically no. So they go from Serbia to Hungary. That's the key state's policy, or you know, that it welcomes everyone who speaks the language. And the minorities are basically around Hungary. So Slovakia, Romania, Serbia, Croatia, some Slovenia, for example. But this educational migration is severe when it comes to Serbia and Romania, and this is a valid question of yours, how the languages are similar. So basically, they are very different. So the Hungarian language is very different from the Serbian, as Serbian is a Slavic language, and Hungarian is this Fingur, so
Nothing is close.
No, not.
Oh, okay.
So
But
there's
it's not like Bulgarian.
No, Serbian, so the Slavic languages are pretty close. Croatian and Serbian are basically the same as Bosnian and Montenegrin. But not, and the Romanian is Romanesque, so it's a different language, branch of languages again. So that is why I told you that there is an accent in the end, because even though you learn the majority language, still, because it's not your first language, it can be, I speak it with the very, very hard accent. So no, basically, yeah, from Serbia, it goes not reversed.
Yeah, thank you again for the invitation as well. And I was wondering, the intermarriage aspect and the way how the children are raised and their issues that they have then within those countries. I quite often relate to myself, and I have the feeling there's a lot of data maybe that would show it's a similar situation in other countries.
Yeah.
So what is the specific aspect there? We're trying to kind of compare it sometimes with other countries and see what is really specific to this region, and because I found a lot of those things like yeah exactly, my kids don't feel like this the other day. It's hard for them to maintain their language. So, and yes, EU passport is a very interesting one. When they're there in Germany, they don't speak the proper German either, so they have like a lot of those things were very common for my own things. And I'm like thinking, what is the specific aspect?
Well, the specific aspect is, when I started, when I was telling you that this is, the national minority and majority background, this is different. So the context and the region, but a lot of things are, of course, similar to other intermarriages across the world, basically, not only Europe. Although Europe has its specificities when it comes to languages, so the US is languages not so prominent.
We go to Janine and then Fatherland, then I put myself on the list. And Janine asks, is there any kind of self-organization of children of minority groups here in Austria? We have Slovenian, Croatian, and Roma youth organizations who try to provide a sense of belonging for youth in between. So do we have similar self-organizations for youth?
Wow, no, I should look up this. No, still not. Still is very much on the state level. So these national councils, for example, are to tackle these issues, but they are still trying to find their voice somehow. They're very rigid. And once I had an idea to present something or to try to present some of my data to them, and to see the gender differences, that maybe they should somehow try to be more open, and that women or young women or girls could go to the STEM sciences, the science that engineering, but then they were didn't want to listen somehow. So basically, they're very, still trying to think in this, very much in this through these ethnic lines, and not open to other identity issues. So I still feel that it would be super to still have something like this.
So Janine, some ideas to import into Serbia.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering whether at the state levels, both the Serbian state level and the Hungarian state level, there is some kind of collaboration pursuing this kind of system that has been created. So is there an atmosphere where the two states collaborate on this, or there is rivalry, or maybe the Serbian state is trying to keep its own minorities inside and prevent them from going to Hungary? And I was also curious whether you had any cases of intermarriages between same-sex couples.
No, not yet. I mean, it would be hard to find. It would be good, but.
It would explain why more women are getting married to interracial. That doesn't really make sense, right?
More women are married to majority partners. That's true, but not same sex though. That's too far for Serbia at this point. I hope there will change. The countries. I feel that Serbia is ignoring this question for so long. They know that this is a problem. That is, but they say, okay, but you have the opportunity for a mother tongue education. What's the problem? What's the problem? However, now they are changing a bit the education of the Serbian language. They have like different varieties. For those who know Serbian when they enter school, so they're basically in the bigger cities where people learn the language. And for those who are living in mainly minority communities. So they tackle now that they try to have this different approach. For those who do not know at all the Serbian language, they start learning as English, like from scratch. And for those who know, they have a different curriculum. So this is something new. We will see if it will give results after few generations.
Thank you. I want to pick up Sophia's question, and I'm thinking about what motivates people also to migrate or to their identity formation. It seems that one element that you alluded to in your presentation as well was a very pragmatic concern. Right? It is about advantages when it comes to education, the labor market, and all those kind of things. So citizenship and identity is often a matter of very pragmatic decisions about life choices and so forth, right? I'm just wondering to what degree you find evidence of this. It's very strategic often how people relate to this. And the other one is to what degree does the political context of, let's say, Hungary and Serbia shape what you find on the ground, because we have two pretty nationalist regimes on both sides, right? And so you have Vučić, and Orban, and so it is a very particular. Also, the artist question, like what is specific, right? There you have these tensions, a strong sense of also exclusionary nationalism with respect to the two countries, right? It's interesting to see that Serbia is still committed to having all these minority rights, right? So, but that's I'm just wondering what the political context does to these personal decisions about educating children in different languages and defining what's identity.
Well, the minorities have this very pragmatic approach to this, whereas I saw that the majority doesn't. So maybe it's also connected to education level. So, but I know, since I don't have such a good sample, it would be good to know that education level affects the yes or not. But yeah, those who are more educated see it as and they are from majority, see it as an advantage that, for example, their children would have two citizenship. It's something very valuable.
Right.
But when it comes to learning the language, they don't see that it requires the language as well. Because the minority partner can ask for citizenship when a child is born, but they are very small. And then after a while, they have to prove themselves that they know when they go to renew their passport. So basically, it's strategic, but you have to maintain the strategy, not
right.
just.
I see.
And the political is very interesting. So most people say that this relationship between Hungary and Serbia is now the best 100 years. So these two political leaders are friends. That it's amazing how much good they did to the minority communities, for example, and so. However, when it comes to the ground, to the field work, it doesn't seem like that, because it all stays somehow on a political level, on the societal level, and it's more perceived by the majority, random majority people when I talk to them. Somehow it emerges how good now the relationship is, so super. So. And it's a bit superficial, so we don't really go through how these things are working. But for example, the railway now between the building the new railway between Belgrade and and it requires a big collaboration between the two states. And this is something presented in the media as a big step and also big unity between the countries. Of course, there are economic reasons behind it, and yes, Hungary had invested into, well, these entrepreneurs got money from the minority community in Vojvodina to, build some new things like mostly, facilities like hotels and these things, and also people who are working in agriculture. However, it all stayed like somehow unnoticed, or it didn't really help out the community. At least I don't see it as. And yeah, even my university supervisor was from Hungary, from Budapest. She said, "Oh, how much money is flowing to the," and I said, "Believe me, I didn't get a foreign from that." But yeah, that's the narrative. The narrative which comes from Hungary that it's too much now. They're too much investing, and even for example, because Orbán likes football very much. And he built a stadium in the middle of Vojvodina in a Hungarian settlement. And of course, what happens? So there are Hungarian boys, playing there, and there will be, if there are some of them good, they will be taken to Hungary to play for the Hungarian team. So basically, this is also some brain drain, sports brain drain.
Vectoring, yeah.
So, and this is not only in Serbia, it's just a thing as well.
Just a very quick question. When Orbán presents his big maps of Radio Hungary, is Vojvodina part of what he claims?
Yes, but he only did, does he do that? I mean, I saw a shot,
Yeah, right.
He was,
I think they circulate these, Radio Hungary maps, right? So.
But
I know that the time is short and I actually have to go to a meeting at noon, so the question will probably be kind of lacking kind of context and stuff, but I guess I'm just trying to put together the two parts of the talk. And there's a lot of qualitative data in both parts of the talk, so I could very well have this wrong. So this is a pretty kind of crude summary. It sounds to me like, with respect to the kind of maintenance of the Hungarian national minority in Serbia, it seems to me that educational choices that are available because of the particular kind of policy configuration people are confronting, it seems like the educational choices available to Hungarians in Serbia wind up reinforcing Hungarianness in at least some sense,
yes.
Whereas the marriage market, as it's culturally and institutionally configured, pulls the community in the other direction towards culture and language loss and disintegration. And I'm just kind of wondering if that's an apt overall summary of the kind of two parts of the talks, and if that then prompts any kind of reflections. Is this what education and marriage are like everywhere with respect to minorities, or is this a particular kind of policy / institutional configuration in the particular Serbia-Hungary context?
Summed up so good, so I should stop here. You're right, totally about it. Yeah, the Hungarianness is somehow enforced with this language education, and then it is totally pulled out when it comes to intermarriages. And this is something which happens in Transylvania as well. So basically, this is absolutely a regional thing. So not only in Serbia, but also in Slovenia and also Romania, and also in Slovakia was very much prominent. Same thing. So it's, yeah, I mean, this is basically the regional thing. I did research on Serbia because that was somehow available for me. But yeah, you're right, I just summed up so well.
To take another coffee.
If you give me more time, if I had more time to speak, I would probably just all up, so it's probably good. that we didn't have much time. I'm sorry, I gotta run to the Senate meeting, but I wanted to get that in there before I forgot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But it's interesting because politically kind of, if it's an agenda that is very behind, it's like in Germany, of course, we have the Goethe Institute and all kinds of other institutions that really promote the German culture. But if we have presented in the intermarriage, the opposite. Wow, like it's an interesting question, why will make it so hard to keep the Hungarian citizenship, let's say, and require the language or something like this in order to have a bigger relation claiming they're belonging to the Hungarian state.
So why so hard to intermarriages to maintain the community? Well, that's a good question because somehow minority, as I told you, the Serbian state is a only minority. So this is this hierarchy between the nations, and it is perceived that if minority is married to a majority, that it is a state, it's a level up the status. So that's why it's more attractive to look at India, even though all these things we said, like double citizenship, EU diploma, and whatnot, people would think, okay, this is, this opens up things, but then there's the other part.
Okay, we're getting very close to the end. So
Yeah.
Karolina, thank you very much for sharing all this.